Hey everybody. So in the last video we went over session management, just the mechanics of it. This time we're going to look at a couple of examples, some worked examples of session management in action. Second of which is a login example, which I think is directly relevant to the project that you have to make. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I've got my module 5a stuff folder that I set up last time. So if we go in here, this is just the code that I give you for this week, for this module. And we're going to look at the conversation example first. So you can see there are 4 files here. The first one's an HTML file, and basically it's a multi-part form, a bit like the quiz example, that collects information on a user through a multi-step process and then summarizes it all at step 4. Okay, so let's take a look at how it works. If I go to step1.html, it's going to ask me what's my name. So I say Sam. Sam. Submit. So you can see it gets sent as a get parameter, and it says hello to me. No mystery about how that happens, right? We know how to receive a get parameter and say hello. Now it says, how old are you? I'll be honest, I am 51. Submit that. So now you can see age equals 51 has been sent here, but it still knows my name. Why? Because we have a PHP session ID here that I set by calling session start, and then I stored the name that I had previously gotten at step 2 into the $session object. And we're now on step 3, and it says, what's your favorite color? I'll just pick a color, submit, and then it sort of summarizes everything. Here's what I know about you. Your name is Sam, you're 51 years old, your favorite color is this one. So it actually used the color that I entered to change the color there. So the color you can see comes in as a parameter. So again, no mystery about where that information came from, but Sam and 51 didn't come from the query here. They were stored in the session. And it says, I shall now forget everything. So it actually does a session unset and a session destroy to get rid of all the session variables, so that if I reload this again, we'll get errors. It's still able to find the color because it's here, but we get undefined index name and undefined index age on lines 26 and 27. So if you take a look at, if we go straight to step 4.php, we can see what's going on here. First thing I do is start the session, and I store the color that I got from the user into the color field of the session. And then down here, I'm retrieving session name. I'm using expression tags here, session age, and session color. So that's why if we come straight to step 4 without going through steps 1, 2, and 3, we haven't established these variables here. We've only established this one. So I only get that color. When it says I shall now forget everything, it does a session destroy to get rid of the session. Okay, the other steps, step 1, oops, I'll double click it, move it over here. Just has a form on it that redirects to step 2. Step 2 is the one that starts the session if there isn't one already. So it's going to start the session here, and then it stores the variable that we're getting in a session variable. So it stores it in session name, and then it uses that to say hello to me. Notice I'm still filtering the input and everything. What I'm not doing here though is checking that I got a name, that I got that it's not null. So this will fail silently if I don't send a parameter to it, which could be bad. So step1.html, if I go to step2.php without sending a parameter, oops, go over here, step2.php, if I go straight there, it just says hello blank. Why? Because the variable wasn't here, so filter input returns null. It's stored null in the $session variable, and null just prints as nothing when you try to print it out. If I go straight to step 3, I should see something similar. Oh, step 3 has that's interesting. I must have done this a while ago and forgotten. Looks like step 3, oh yeah, has an error in it. So this is me using the isSet function. So this is a check to make sure the session is still alive. Okay, so if it's not still alive, it just dies and says go back to, and gives me a link to step 1. Otherwise, it stores the age and then goes on to tell me my name and ask me for my favorite color. So yeah, so when you're using sessions, I'm not doing it a lot in this code, but you have to do this a lot. Before you try and access a session variable, you have to make sure that the session is alive. As I said last time, there's a couple of ways that could not be true. One is if the user has left their computer long enough and come back, the session may have expired on the server, or if they've closed the browser and reopened it and gone back, the session may have expired on their browser because of that. And you can fix that. You can change the expiry dates of sessions and so on, but it's a fiddly thing to do, so we won't bother to do it here. It's sort of it's a server admin kind of thing to do, really. But you just can't know whether when the user comes in, whether they have recently enough gone through the steps to create a session for themselves. So you always have to check for that. Okay, I was going to say any questions, but there's nobody here. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments on YouTube or whatever. Send me an email. So that's the first example that I wanted to go through. The second example is called login. And this is, like I said, is directly relevant to what you're doing. So how do you log somebody in and then keep them logged in? So like, when you get into Canvas, you have to log in. Somehow it knows that you're logged in and it keeps you logged in. So you can go from one page to another. But if the session ever does expire and you try to go back to one of those pages, it recognizes that you're not logged in and that you shouldn't be there, and gives you some kind of an error page. So if we go to the login example, please log in. Am I going to be able to remember what my password is for this? Oh, what do you know? Chrome remembered. So I'm not actually sure what the password is. We could look it up though, it's in the code. So I logged in and now it says, welcome Sam Scott. Where would you like to go? Here, you are here. So this is the idea here is that I've come in the front door, and I'm now landed on kind of a menu page, and I can go to other parts of the site. So here.php, there.php. It's just a skeleton of a site. There's nothing else there. And I can log out like that. You are so logged out, it says. If I now try to go back to menu.php, can't get in. Access denied. If I try to go to here.php, same thing. If I try to go to there.php, same thing. I can't get into any of these places. So I have to go through the login screen, type the correct password. If I type the wrong password and hit go, no, don't update it. It'll say login error, access denied. Try again, go, okay, we're in because you did the right password. So let's take a look at how that code actually works. The index.php file is just a form. The index.html file is just a form. It's sending post parameters. That's always the right thing to do when people are logging in. If you change that to get, then even though it's masking the parameter here, or masking the password here, it will still show the password in the URL, and you don't want people looking over your user's shoulder to see that. So the place it goes to is menu.php. Let's take a look at that. So this is not a real login. I get the user ID and I get the password. I filter them properly. I make sure that they exist. And then I check them. And oh yeah, here's my password. It's just Sam's password. So you can try this if you want to try that. I just check, does the user ID equal this and the password equal that? Now this part is not very realistic. What you should be doing here is doing a database lookup. So you have to connect to the database. You have to go to your user table and try to select using that user ID and password combination. And if you get a row, then you know that was a good user ID and password combination. If you don't get a row, then it was a bad user ID and password combination. But here, just to keep it simple, I'm just checking them against hard-coded strings. And here's the thing that I do. If it doesn't work, if that was a bad user ID and password, I destroy everything, kick them out completely, unset everything, and so on. If it was okay, then all I need to do is set a single session variable. It can be just a flag or whatever, but I probably want to hang on to their user ID, especially if they're going to then get some custom data shown to them because of who they are. So I'll just store their user ID in the session. Okay, and then from that point on, in all my files, all I have to do is check if the user ID is set in the session. And if it is, then I know the person is logged in, and if it's not, then they're not. So down here, there's a model of that. If user ID is set, then I do this. I welcome them, ask them where they would like to go, give them the menu. Otherwise, I give them the login error, so they don't get to see that otherwise. And the here and there pages are both the same, but I'll show them to you. I'll show you one of them. Again, I start the session, and what I'm doing here is I'm calling the isSet function. I want to know, is the user ID field of the session object set? If it is, then they came through the front door and their password and user ID combination were approved. So if that's been set, I just assign that here. It's going to be false or true. So access is going to be true or false. So then I just say if access is true, then I give them the content. And if it's not true, then I give them the error message. Okay? And there works in exactly the same way. It's the same, it just says there instead of here. And the logout script is right here. I start the session and then I immediately unset and destroy. And I just tell them you're logged out. And you can go here to log in again. So unsetting and destroying the session makes sure that the next time I come here and ask if this is set, it will not be set. All right, so that's how you log in. Everything that you need pretty much is here, except, and you'll have to tweak it for your assignment. The only thing that's really missing is the database part of it. The database part has another wrinkle to it, which is that you need to make sure that your stuff is secure, that your passwords are being stored in a secure format, relatively secure anyway, by using hashing. And we'll cover that in the class on security. Okay, yeah, I think that's all I wanted to show you. So again, if we go back to the module here, the section 2 just explains what each of the files do and how they do what they do. The page before that has basically the 411 on sessions. So these are the four things that you need to know about sessions. Session start, session destroy. Oh yeah, I guess I didn't even bother with session unset because it's a little bit redundant. I used to do that one more, but now I'm just saying just do session destroy. That's fine. The isSet to find out whether the session is active, and $session to store and retrieve information. And these are just examples of showing how to use that stuff to do different things. Okay, I do want to leave you with an exercise. So one exercise is to modify all the pages of the conversation example so that using isSet, so that if any of the relevant session keys are not set, they get a nice looking page telling them their session's expired. Give them a link back to the first page. Okay, second one is, oh yeah, you don't have to store just strings in a session object. There's no particular, I can store anything I want in a session object. So I could, for example, do something like this. Wait, $_session, my data, and I could put a new array here. I could have an array. It can be an associative array if I want, like this. So there are no actual restrictions. The key here, I believe, has to be a string. I believe it does. I could be wrong about that, but I think the key has to be a string. But the value you store there can be anything you want, any type. Integer, object, array, associative array, whatever you want. Okay, so all of this is legal. You can store whatever data you want there. So it's pretty handy container. You can store a whole array of objects in there if you need to. So what I'm asking you to do here is just modify it so that there's a session key called user with an associative array, and it should have fields or keys for name, age, and favorite color. Initially fill them out with default values. Okay, and then number 3 is kind of like suggesting that you put the database onto this example, which is what you'll have to do for your assignment anyway. So create a user table, insert a few records, just store the passwords in plain text for now, then modify the login example so it connects to the database, issues the select query, and if no rows are returned, the user is not logged in. Okay, so those are some things to try. And we'll look at AJAX in the next video, AJAX with session management. Okay, see you in the next video.